Henry Wadsworth Longfellow once said, "Music is the universal language of mankind," and this notion is no more apparent than in Epcot's World Showcase. One of the most distinctive settings in any Disney park, its origins can be traced back to Walt Disney's initial plans for an experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Amongst the community's hotels and theaters would be an international shopping district, allowing its residents to traverse various global markets, all just a convenient monorail or people mover right away. And when Walt's Florida project eventually evolved into the Epcot of today, that quaint shopping district grew into a veritable tapestry of nations, celebrating the history, heritage, and traditions of 11 countries. From Mexico to Canada, guests are immersed within each culture through food, architecture, attractions, and of course, music. So grab your Epcot souvenir passport as we explore the scores, songs, and live performances of the World Showcase. This time on What's the Score?
I feel a little bit like Columbus felt when he started on his journey into the New World. Because on the other side of this man-made lagoon is a brand new man-made world. And in that world, there are 9 countries that are thousands of miles apart geographically. And they're joined together in a 1-mile area to display their culture, their art, and their historical achievements.
For a park renowned for its original scores, it's surprising that for Epcot's inaugural television special, Disney decided to outsource its songwriting duties. Earl Brown, best known for penning Elvis's 1968 hit If I Can Dream, gives host Danny Kaye a chance to showcase the world.
A fellowship of youngsters with a special dream to share. Their different customs blending in a mixture rich and rare. The need was never greater for all people everywhere. So the Imagineers devised this wondrous plan. The World Showcase of the family of man.
Some of the song's more memorable moments include this nightmare-inducing horse, and Kay being a little too familiar with some of the female cast members. And while its message of global unity is well-intentioned, let's just say its execution leaves a little something to be desired.
We'll cross the Crystal Lagoon to Shanghai and Kowloon. Then we'll travel to Mexico and Venice, Italy. We may meet Jojo San on the shores of Japan. La Belle France, oh may we, you'll be the toast of Paris. We'll take a Teutonic spin to Heidelberg and Berlin. Then to the far United Kingdom we'll away. Then we'll see Canada from Calgary to mighty Hudson Bay.
Still, the musical number did sufficiently whet audiences' appetites for global exploration.
Let's celebrate the showcase of the
In fact, music was so instrumental to the initial guest experience that the Sherman Brothers wrote an entire theme song dedicated to this section of the park, to prove that there really is no place like the World Showcase.
Side by side, the flags fly and high, before the happy rainbow of all nations. Here you see all nationalities, as proudly they display their great creations.
Also known as the World Showcase March, this rare track was initially written in 1982 for the park's grand opening celebrations, and would intermittently return over the next few years, most prominently in the short-lived lagoon show Skaleidoscope, which saw the Dreamfinder and Figment battling water dragons with seaplanes and jet skis. The 80s were a weird time, man. And with that, I think it's high time our musical expedition gets underway. Let's start our journey off with my personal favorite pavilion, Mexico, and proceed clockwise. As anyone who's attempted to drink around the world knows, that's the only way to do it and not die. The first of World Showcase's original 9 pavilions, Mexico was the only country to feature an actual ride on opening day. Colloquially referred to as Mexican Small World due to its Mary Blair-inspired scenes, El Rio del Tiempo was a relaxing boat ride through the history of Mexico, from the Mayans and Aztecs to present day. Its theme song was composed by Armando Corral, with lyrics by ex Atencio. Prolific animator turned Imagineer, Atencio's other notable works include writing the lyrics for Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, Grim Grinning Ghosts, and the spiritually similar Magic Kingdom attraction If You Had Wings.
You could fly to a plaza where the people play at a Mexican fiesta in that land of Olay.
If you had wings, if you had wings, if you had wings, had wings, had wings, had wings.
Atencio also occasionally lent his voice to these attractions, whether as the Talking Skull in Pirates of the Caribbean, or as the safety announcer in the Haunted Mansion, who's heard when playful spooks interrupt the tour. For El Rio del Tiempo, Atencio fittingly included lyrics in both English and Spanish that invited guests to come explore Mexico's diverse cities and regions.
Bienvenido amigos, querido a México, la tierra de fiesta se ve donde quiera. Oigan las marimbas y mariachis también, tocan serenatas y ritmos latinos, vengan aquí.
In 2007, El Rio del Tiempo was changed into the Grand Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros. The updated storyline sees Panchito Pistoles and Jose Carioca, voiced by Yakko Warner himself, Rob Paulson, searching for Donald throughout present-day Mexico, while the temperamental duck takes in the country's sights and ogles at the locals. Which, for anyone who's seen the Three Caballeros, honestly tracks. The attraction's score is derived from the film's title song, though its catchy melody actually predates Disney's use of it. Originally written by Manuel Esperon as the title song for the 1941 Mexican film Ay Jalisco No Te Rajes, the ranchera ballad was performed by famed Mexican singer-slash-actor Jorge Negrete. Due to the song's immense popularity in Latin America, Walt personally asked Esperon to adapt it for the Three Caballeros, with zippity-doo-dah lyricist Ray Gilbert providing new English lyrics. The background music for the pavilion is comprised of classical Mexican folk songs and mariachi standards like Paloma Negra, Jesucita in Chihuahua, and La Llorona. In 2020, Mexico became the first of 3 pavilions to have Disney music implemented into their background loops, with Remember Me from Coco added into the mix, bringing Kristen Anderson and Robert Lopez's quest for global domination one country closer to completion. We'll address the implications of this change a little later. But where the Mexico Pavilion truly shines is with its live performances. Both Marimba de las Americas and Viva Mexico Folklore provide lively interpretations of Latin America's folk songs and dances. But the pavilion's most famous group is undoubtedly Mariachi Cobre. Founded in the 1970s by brothers Randy and Steve Carrillo, the Tucson, Arizona-based group first performed at the Magic Kingdom and the Contemporaries Grand Canyon Concourse. They were then invited to perform at the soon-to-be-opened Epcot, where they've continued to do so for the past 40 years.
World culture is a big part of the Epcot experience. We see the emotion, crying, singing, dancing, or just listening. And they'll come up to us and say, wow, I remember when my grandfather or great-grandparents used to sing this song put us to sleep with this song, sang this song on our birthday, sang this song on our anniversary. So I feel that it's Mariachi Cobre's responsibility to share our music, our culture, our Hispanic heritage, especially with people who are seeing mariachi for the first time.
They're currently tied with the Voices of Liberty and Oktoberfest music content for the park's longest performing group, with most of the original members still performing to this day. Next, we travel to the newest addition to the World Showcase, Norway. Given, I use the term new rather loosely, as the pavilion actually opened in 1988. While primarily inspired by Nordic culture, the pavilion also serves as a celebration for all of Scandinavia, even the fictional parts. But before we address the pavilion's current case of frozen fever, let's first talk about Norway's original attraction, Maelstrom. Initially conceived as a mythical boat ride to Valhalla, the Sherman brothers were asked to write the attraction's theme song. However, the Norwegian corporate sponsors for the pavilion felt the attraction should showcase all that Norway had to offer. So out went the gods, and in came the polar bears and oil rigs. Despite the more realistic setting, Imagineers did keep the trolls and nookins from their initial concepts, who now prowled the water's edge, sending unsuspecting guests back, over the falls. And for the most part, the attraction didn't have much music to speak of, outside of a few incidental music cues and a brief use of Grieg's Morning Mood from the classic Norwegian play Peer Gynt. The 5-minute travelogue which followed the attraction featured an original score by French composer Michel Colombier, and was directed by Paul Gerber, who also directed the opening film for The Living Seas and Symbiosis for the Land Pavilion. Sadly, Maelstrom's fans found themselves pining for the fjords when the X-attraction was replaced by Frozen Ever After in 2016. A strong departure from Maelstrom both thematically and musically, the updated attraction is filled to the brim with music, with every scene either showcasing Christoph Beck's score or one of the Lopez's songs from the first film, some even with new lyrics, or lack thereof. Josh Gad, Jonathan Groff, Kristen Bell, and Idina Menzel all returned to voice their characters from the film. Interestingly enough, Eatamin Vweli, which opens the film and is played during the attraction's lift hill, was actually written in 2002 by Norwegian composer Frode Filaheim. And while primarily made up of covers of the original filmed songs, the Q's music loop does include a few classic Scandinavian pieces as well, like the Swedish Slångspolska efter Biskale by Carl Ersen Bosa. Soon, international guests will be able to journey into the unknown, as updated versions of the attraction are expected to open at Disneyland Paris, Hong Kong Disneyland, and Tokyo Disney Sea. Norway's area music is derived from the works of famous Norwegian musicians such as Rikard Norrak, who composed the Norwegian national anthem, Hans Brimi, the foremost Norwegian folk fiddle player of the 20th century, and songwriting duo Secret Gardens, whose piece Nocturne won the 1995 Eurovision Song Contest. The current loop replaced the 1988 original in 2005, and frankly, I find there's no better way to enjoy it than with a piece of school bread and taking in the surroundings of Oslo's Stav Church and the statue of St. Olaf. Given its rich musical history, it's perhaps surprising that Norway's only hosted a few live musical groups over the years, with the most prominent being the Scandinavian folk band Spellemans Glädje, who performed there until 2008. Leaving Scandinavia behind, let's continue our journey east to China. Besides its extensive shopping and dining, the pavilion's main attraction is the Circle Vision film Reflections of China. After passing through a 1/2 scale recreation of Beijing's Temple of Heaven, guests are treated to a 360-degree view of China's natural beauty. Originally titled Wonders of China, the film score was one of Buddy Baker's major contributions to the World Showcase. While probably most well known for composing the music for the Haunted Mansion, Baker's career with Disney lasted nearly 50 years, with over 200 credits to his name. Like most Imagineers, Baker started his career working at the studio first, scoring such films as The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and The Fox and the Hound. He first entered the theme park arena with Disney's Journey to the 1964 World's Fair, providing the music for the original versions of Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and The Carousel of Progress. Epcot became Baker's crowning achievement, with his music heard in the Universe of Energy, The American Adventure, Impressions de France, and of course Wonders of China. Even though Baker retired in 1983, he returned to compose the scores for Tokyo DisneySea's Journey to the Center of the Earth and the original version of Sinbad's 7 Voyages. Baker was no stranger to Circle Vision attractions, having served as music director for Magic Kingdom's Magic Carpet Round the World and the 1967 version of Disneyland's America the Beautiful. Wonders of China could actually be seen at Disneyland as well from 1984 to 1996, where it played alongside an updated version of America the Beautiful titled American Journeys. Richard Bellis was brought on to rescore the attraction for its 2003 update into Reflections of China. Bellis's work is nearly as extensive as Baker's, having composed the music for the original Star Tours, Disneyland's Indiana Jones Adventure, and the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, just to name a few. Both iterations of the film were directed by Jeff Blythe, who in addition to directing the 1989 Disney film Cheetah, also filmed the iconic opening sequence to The Shining. Reflections is set to close sometime soon to make way for its third incarnation, the company's first seamless 360-degree film, Wondrous China, but it's yet unknown who will be composing the score for the updated attraction. While waiting in the attraction's lobby, guests used to be entertained by a variety of live performances, including Erhu musician Wang Guowei and Zhang soloist Anne Yao. Both instruments are thousands of years old, with the first mention of the Zhang harp found in 3rd century Chinese literature. Despite leaving Epcot in 2010, Yao continues to perform throughout the United States, and even virtually during the 2020 lockdown. China remains one of the most serene locations in the entire World Showcase. Visitors can stroll through its winding streets and extensive gardens while enjoying the classic arrangements by the Jiangsu Folk Orchestra and the Shanghai Philharmonic. Such pieces as Tea Harvest by Lei Qiang and Petty Scenes in the South Yangtze help conjure images of walking alongside the tranquil ponds of Shanghai's Yuyang Garden. In 2020, China became the second pavilion to receive a Disney-fied update, adding in selections from Mulan. While these new arrangements match the instrumentation and style of the more authentic pieces, this change has caused quite a stir amongst Epcot purists, who fear that the park is now showcasing the company over the countries. I try to view these additions more favorably, with them serving as a bridge between modern America sensibilities and the World Showcase's message of global unity. By utilizing these familiar songs and adapting them into the various cultures represented, wider audiences, particularly children, can be eased into these global musical styles that they might otherwise not appreciate due to fear of alienation. Or maybe Disney just wants to sell more toys of the Eddie Murphy dragon. In between China and Germany stands the refreshment Outpost, the final remnant of Epcot's cancelled Equatorial Africa Pavilion. Because everyone's favorite country is Africa.
It's also a big continent if you're a geographer.
Yeah.
Despite not being much more than a food and merchandise stand, the Outpost did once have its own live performance group, Orishi Rishi African Folklore, made up of Nigerian husband and wife duo Dawn and Tuta Harrell. Dawn, a graduate of African Studies from UCLA, and Tutu, a graduate of Crown College in London, use music as a means of sharing the diverse history of Africa and enacting social change. They were even asked to appear as guests on an episode of Gola Gola Island. While their tenure at Epcot ended in 2008, after an impressive 12,000 shows, the Harrells continue to share their music and advocate for arts in schools around the world. Willkommen in Deutschland. In this quaint Bavarian village, every day is Oktoberfest. Germany's had quite the revolving door of musical acts over the years, with most only lasting a season or two. There was Wiesenbaum, a Bavarian band, and then Grooven Alps, another Bavarian band, but this time with ladders, and more recently Lebendig, a modern German rock group who made their American premiere at the park. The self-proclaimed Yodel Queen of Austria, Margaret Almer, has had a recurring residency since 2016, and I have to wonder if she knows any Simon and Garfield.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
The beer garden's background music fittingly features classic polkas and drinking songs, such as Friedrich Wilhelm Müller's The Happy Wanderer and Trompeten Echo by Slavko Avenzik, though sadly Der Guten Tag Hopklop, and whatever these guys are doing, didn't make the cut. The restaurant's house band, Oktoberfest Musikanten, were initially only hired for Epcot's inaugural year, but have remained ever since. Band leader Martin Gross may be from Buffalo, New York, but his Austrian heritage stretches back decades, and accordion player Eddie Hadner actually emigrated to the United States from Austria. Every half an hour they perform such standards as In München steht ein Hofbräuhaus and the infamous Chicken Dance. Unique aspects of their performances include German cowbells, musical saws, the Glockenspiel, and alpine horns. Of course, in between songs, the band leads diners in the traditional toast of Ein Prosit. As you stumble your way back outside, keep an ear out for pieces by Schubert, Mozart, and Waldteufel, who may have lived in France, but was born in Germany, and whose name means forest devil. Isn't that fun? Strangely, several songs from this loop, such as Ein Heimelig, also played in Pinocchio's Village House at Disneyland. I say strangely because Pinocchio is an Italian story, not a German one. But speaking of, no, not that version. I still haven't forgiven them for what they did to Monstro.
Look how they massacred my boy.
As we journey over the Alps, or in this case a model railroad, we arrive at the next stop of our mini-European tour. Largely inspired by the sights and sounds of Venice, Visitors traveling over the pavilion's canals or by the 1/5 recreation of St. Mark's Campanile can hear Italian classics like O Sole Mio, Al di là, and Funiculi Funicula, which may have been written to commemorate the opening of the first funicular railway on Mount Vesuvius, but is probably better known today as the pizza delivery music in the Spider-Man 2 video game. The pavilion also has an odd obsession with restaurants, including a gelateria, Via Napoli Pizzeria, and the high-end Tutto Italia, originally known as Alfredo's, as it was once owned and operated by the direct descendants of the inventor of fettuccine Alfredo himself, Alfredo Di Lelio. Of course, not to be confused with Pizza by Alfredo.
Same thing. No stars. All right. You know what? I don't understand when you all talk at the same time.
And for those attempting to virtually drink around the world while watching this, I dare you to drink every time I said Alfredo. Italy does have an interesting past when it comes to its live performers, focusing more on comedy than music.
He carved the shoulders. He carved the right arm. He carved the left arm. And he went right to the feet because it's Disney. Yep.
Rondo Veneziano was an extension of the Italian electronic classical music group, originally created by Maestro Gian Piero Reverberi. Known for their elaborate costumes and covers, the group renamed themselves Rondo Masquerade after Disney's contract with Veneziano expired. This copyright infringement led to a series of licensing issues and the group's eventual removal. They were quickly replaced with Nova Era, another classical electronic music group, founded by composer Andre Rocca and oboist Maria Luisa Copelli. They only performed at Epcot for 1 year, but have since gone on to perform in Venice, Versailles, and Dubai. Starting in 2012, they returned to Walt Disney World as regular performers at Disney Springs, where they remain to this day. From there, Italy's musical history becomes muddier, with various acts including I Cantonopoli and the comedic Ziti sisters all coming and going from the pavilion over the next decade or so. The last known musicians were Sebandieratori di San Sepolcro, a flag-throwing group actually from Italy that lasted from 2014 to 2016. Since then, the pavilion has returned to its comedic roots with the fan favorite Sergio the Juggler. And before we depart, let me throw in one more Alfredo for good measure. We've officially reached the halfway point with Epcot's host country, America. While I previously covered the music of the American Adventure show itself, the rest of the pavilion still has a lot to offer, namely, the Voices of Liberty. Epcot's most famous musical group was founded by Derek Johnson under the name Regeneration. Performing a variety of religious and American standards, the group was hired in the early 1970s by Disney's entertainment director Bob Cross to perform at the Magic Kingdom during President's Week, with Cross even declaring that they were, quote, more Disney than Disney. Due to the strong public reception, they were invited back, and eventually to Epcot.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain.
Over the years, they have performed for countless guests, including 5 U.S. presidents.
When we first started Voices of Liberty, we had 16 in the first cast, then they doubled the cast. It's because we need to do more shows, so we had 32. And we were auditioning 1,000 people about every year, but then your need becomes less and less for numbers because a lot of people stay around. Like my wife Debbie, for instance, who sang in Voices of Liberty for a span of 33 years, 47,000 shows, which is, nobody's ever going to touch that.
Nope.
For 19 years, Johnson continued to serve as the group's musical director and arranger, with more than 75 Americana songs and 60 Christmas carols in their repertoire, including those sung in Epcot's annual Candlelight Processional, which Johnson also directed. From Voices of Liberty came the modern a cappella group Voctave. Known for their stirring arrangements of classic Disney songs and Broadway standards, Voctave was the brainchild of Voices of Liberty alumni Jamie Ray.
So Voctave kind of came out of, I don't want to say accident, but it was not planned. And I was doing different projects and different recordings with all people from Voices of Liberty. When Voices of Liberty is not at Disney, they go by a very clever name of the Liberty Voices, so as not to step on Disney's toes. But I was doing things with a lot of singers and living in that world, and started doing some videos and recordings that people were starting to notice. And what really happened was the girl from Pentatonics, Kirsten Maldonado, who is one of the sweetest and most wonderful friends of mine now, she saw a video of a group singing something that I had written of the Disney Fly Medley.
Think of a wonderful thought, any happy little thought. Think of Christmas, think of snow, think of sleigh bells, off you go, like reindeer in the sky. You can fly, you can fly, you can fly.
With Maldonado's support, the group's fame soon catapulted, and they have since released 10 albums, becoming well known the world over. Despite being forced into hiatus due to the park's shutdown in March of 2020, the Voices of Liberty triumphantly returned in January of 2022, sporting a new look. With the Voices of Liberty serving as the cornerstone of the American Pavilion's entertainment lineup, only a few other groups have supplemented them over the years. The American Fife and Drum Corps added a revolutionary flair to the proceedings, but Disney quietly ended their run back in 2014. The American Gardens Theater has served as Epcot's main venue for outside talent since the park's opening, hosting everyone from Big Bad Voodoo Daddy to Barbie. Marie Osmond performed Freedom in the aforementioned Epcot opening television special, and 40 years later returned to that same stage as narrator for the Candlelight Processional. In regards to the land's area music, there's quite a bit of overlap with its sister land, Liberty Square. Civil War-era songs like the Battle Cry of Freedom are intermixed with Stephen Foster's Swanee River, George Gershwin's Summertime from Porgy and Bess, and Kansas's state song, Home on the Range. And now, from America, we travel over the Pacific Ocean to the land of the rising sun. Japan's current area music is rather indicative of the country itself, seamlessly blending both traditional and modern pieces together. While you can hear J-pop standards in the pavilion's current exhibit on kawaii culture, the rest of the area music features pieces like Sakura, A Day in Spring, which is oddly included twice in the current loop, and Stardust Tapestry, all of which help augment the incredibly peaceful atmosphere. That serenity is temporarily disrupted when the Matsurisa Taiko drummers perform. The ensemble first began performing at Epcot in 1983 as Kanto Abure Daiko under the direction of Yoshihisa Ishikura. In 1988, Yoshihisa left the group to return to Japan, and fellow performer Taikamasa Ishikura took over and formed Matsurisa, which means festival in Japanese. And while it does translate to drum in Japanese, taiko actually refers to an entire family of traditional Japanese percussive instruments, many of which have been used in religious ceremonies or on the battlefield for over 2,000 years. The Goju no To, or five-story pagoda the drummers perform on, is a replica of the 7th century Horyuji Temple located in Nara, Japan. Each tier of the pagoda represents one of the core elements from which Buddhists believe all things in the universe are created, starting with earth, then water, fire, wind, and sky. At the roof's apex stands a sorin, a traditional Japanese finial divided into several sections, each with a symbolic meaning. Though Epcot's contains one non-traditional element, a lightning rod. At the rear of the pavilion stands an imposing structure inspired by the white egret castle of Himeji. While it currently only houses the pavilion's rotating art exhibits, this building may be the most historically fascinating in the entire pavilion, as it was to serve as the entrance for a myriad of unbuilt attractions. Everything from a bullet train simulator to a people mover-esque omnimover were considered at one time or another. The grandest was the indoor roller coaster themed around Mount Fuji. Fujifilm had even offered to fund and sponsor the attraction, but Disney's then film provider Kodak was none too happy about having a giant monument dedicated to their competitor erected in the park, and the deal fell through. But I want to focus on the very first proposed attraction for the Japan Pavilion, as it was undoubtedly the most musical.
Born of the great mother sea, the outside world was a dark mystery. We lived on our islands alone, till our first brave sailors explored the unknown, reaching out.
Heavily inspired by the Carousel of Progress, Meet the World was a 4-act exploration through the history of Japan. Besides its subject matter, the main difference between the two attractions was that the seating arrangement would be reversed, with the audience sitting within the inner ring of the theater and the show scenes taking place on the outer ring, allowing for larger set pieces at a slightly reduced capacity. Looking to replicate the musical success of the Carousel of Progress, the Sherman Brothers were tasked with creating the attraction's score and theme song. Taking a page out of the American Adventures book, the story would have been conveyed through both animatronics and film-based segments. Unfortunately, the Sherman Brothers' bad luck with World Showcase attractions continued, as even though the project was largely finished, structural errors within the show building's foundation prevented it from being installed. With Epcot's construction already running behind and over budget, rather than tearing down the existing structure and starting over, Imagineering decided to cut their losses and left it incomplete, where it remains to this day. Thankfully, the old Imagineering adage that no good idea ever truly dies proved to be true once more, as Meet the World became an opening day attraction in Tokyo Disneyland's Tomorrowland. It continued to perform there for thousands of audiences until its closure in 2002. From the waters of Japan, we travel to the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, as we enter our next country, Morocco. While every country in Epcot prides itself on being historically accurate, Morocco is perhaps the most authentic pavilion, as its design and construction were personally conducted by King Hassan II's team of craftsmen and artisans. Representing 3 major Moroccan cities, Casablanca, Fez, and Marrakesh, the pavilion's architecture is stunningly detailed and intricate. Its authenticity also ensured complete adherence to the country's religious customs, including not illuminating the pavilion's replica of the Kotubia minaret during the evening's nighttime spectaculars. While wandering the pavilion's many alleyways and courtyards, guests may catch the occasional noise of a bustling bazaar. Indistinct voices, animal sounds, and music all add to the atmosphere of an ancient city teeming with life. The pavilion's area loop is largely comprised of the Jabala Sufi trance music of the master musicians of Jajuka, Once described by prominent Beat Generation author William Burroughs as a 4,000-year-old rock and roll band, the group first began within the small village of Jajuka along the ridge of the Rif Mountains of northern Morocco. Despite the group's existence tracing back centuries, they were first introduced to the Western world in the 1950s, when Moroccan folklorist Mohamed Hamri invited them to play at his restaurant in Tangier, that was frequented by notable European musicians and artists. Original Rolling Stones leader Brian Jones stumbled upon the group during his travels to Morocco in the 1960s, and became the first Western musician to record with them. In his posthumously released 1971 album, Brian Jones presents The Pipes of Pan at Jajuka. By the early 1990s, the group split into two factions, with one retaining the original name, and the other becoming the Master Musicians of Jajuka led by Bakir Attar. Both groups still perform around the world, and every member remains a direct descendant of previous members. Sadly, the pavilion's authenticity has begun waning of late, becoming more of a catch-all for the entire Middle East, a region that doesn't even include Morocco. Aladdin and Jasmine have become the unofficial icons for the pavilion, because of all those Arabian Nights Morocco's known for. Though I guess it's better than what they originally had to work with. This mentality is carried over into the land's newer developments, with the soundtrack for Spice Road Table being about as culturally authentic as their oh-so-tasty hummus fries. I think Zorba's dance from the 1964 hit film Zorba the Greek is probably the strangest inclusion. With the Moroccan government officially relinquishing ownership of the pavilion back to Disney in 2020, the fate of the pavilion remains up in the air. As of now, though, only a few minimal changes have been made, including the removal of a certain infamous chimney. That all said, Morocco does have one of the most extensive live music lineups in the entire World Showcase. Fan favorite Mo Rockin' was the most well-known, with their tenure beginning in 1999 and ending in 2014, on the very same day as the American Fife and Drum Corps. Since then, the pavilion's hosted a large variety of musical acts for the park's many festivals. Banat al-Hurariya was an almost entirely female Berber music and dance group, while Rebab Fusion celebrated 70s jazz funk and Afropop. And several members of Mo Rockin' even returned as a new group, Musique Arnamenco. For the past several years, Atlas Fusion has joined the Festival of the Arts, introducing a combination of Nawa music and modern Moroccan rock. But, much like Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart, it's now time for us to leave Casablanca behind. At least, we'll always have Paris.
Wow, the White House.
Without question, the pièce de résistance of the France Pavilion is Impressions de France. Buddy Baker's third major contribution to the World Showcase after Reflections of China and the American Adventure, his original score is masterfully interwoven with some of France's greatest compositions. Handpicked by Impressions director Rick Harper, 13 classical pieces underscore 49 scenes, depicting the majesty and sophistication of the country. Regarding the inspiration for his musical selections, Harper said, "I grew up being exposed to a lot of great music. My mother is a fantastic musician and pianist, and when I was in grade school, she would take me out of school to go to the San Francisco Opera and Symphony. I built a classical music collection of records starting from when I was about 6 years old. I was really familiar with music from the Romantic era and primarily French music. It's almost in my DNA. Even to this day, that's the music of my preference." The film opens with Eddie Beckett's haunting flute solo from Debussy's Syrinx, before segueing into Cézanne's Aquarium from his Carnival of the Animals. The Rondo Allegro Agitato from François-Adrien Bourdieu's Concerto for Harp and Strings in C helps portray the majesty of the Château de Chambord. Offenbach's Overture from Gaîté Parisien accompanies a frolicking group of bikers, while Ravel's Lever de Jour brings hot air balloons floating along the Loire, while the film's narrator Claude Gobet quotes the great French poet Charles Baudelaire.
Et sans savoir pourquoi, disent toujours, allons. They leave for the sake of living, and without knowing why, they always say, we must go.
Long before being associated with yo-yoing flamingos, the finale to Carnival the Animals conveyed the bustling hubbub of Parisian transit. Finally, Paul Dukas' fanfare from La Paris and Saint-Saëns' organ symphony herald a dramatic finale atop the Eiffel Tower. The music was also a technical marvel, as Impressions was the very first film to have a completely digital soundtrack. Oddly enough, it wasn't recorded in either France or America, but by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra at the famed Abbey Road Studios. The last of Epcot's original attractions left completely unaltered, besides a 4K remaster in 2020, seeing the film today makes me sad. It is just as beautiful as always, but opportunities to see it have been slowly diminishing. Currently, it is only shown from 7:30 p.m. until the park's closing, having been replaced by the Beauty and the Beast sing-along.
Oh, it's the perfect fit! Who knew we were both the same size?
Narrated by Mrs. Potts herself, the late Dame Angela Lansbury, the sing-along is a 15-minute retelling of the animated film, with a few new additions to the tale as old as time. While Alan Menken and Howard Ashman's Oscar-winning songs are sure to be a bigger hit with families, the subtle majesty of Impression's score is one of the best ever produced for the park, and now it's merely relegated to a footnote in the pavilion. Like Mexico and China, France was the third and, as of now, final pavilion to receive a Disney-fied update to its area music. Premiering in conjunction with the sing-along, visitors can now hear Parisian-inspired covers of the songs from Beauty and the Beast, The Aristocats, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Some effort was taken to placate the Epcot purists, as there are still original compositions within the loop, notably La Vie en Rose, and André Rieu's arrangement of the Edith Piaf classic Sous les ciels de Paris. Francis Lay's theme to Un homme et une femme, or A Man and a Woman, which was featured in the pavilion's original loop, sadly did not survive the update. While Disney characters have always had a place at the World Showcase, well, at least since the mid-80s, lest we be reminded of the creepy oversized dolls that used to wander the park, the current state of the France Pavilion is a level of corporate synergy previously unseen in the park. It seems more like a celebration of Disney's French stories and characters than the country itself, which, to their credit, they do seem to have an abundance of. I still view these recent changes with tepid optimism. Any Hunchback representation is a win in my book, but it does make me nervous for the park's future. I've always enjoyed Epcot's unique voice, and while the inclusion of Disney characters is inevitable at this point, there's a way to integrate them and still preserve the park's vision. With that said, I do believe Remy's Ratatouille adventure and the pavilion's subsequent expansion is the best way to implement this concept. While cloned from the Walt Disney Studios park in France, the trackless dark ride is equally a celebration of the 2007 Pixar classic as it is France itself. Remy is the perfect ambassador to guide guests through the extensive cuisine of France, and the attraction feels more like a celebration of the culture rather than just capitalizing off of it.
There's a turning point in the Ratatouille story, and that's where my song plays.
The song was kind of reflective of the story in the film, of somebody who wants something and how are they going to get it.
It feels very nice to sing in a film that takes place in Paris, and to know that this song is going to be kept in that same language abroad.
Michael Giacchino's score is used to full effect throughout the entire area, serving as a love letter to modern Parisian jazz. Impressions de France remains the last lingering bastion of Epcot's original spirit. But the recent additions to the pavilion mirror the musical evolution of the country itself, and hopefully, both can exist in tandem for the foreseeable future. If anything, the France Pavilion proves that while not everyone can become a great musician can come from anywhere.
Stonehenge.
As we cross over Epcot's version of the English Channel, I would like to briefly mention a few of the roaming music acts that the World Showcase has hosted over the years. The World Class Brass was a comedic brass quartet from the 80s, and the Junkanoo Bus Show performed 90s-era reggae and Latin music atop one of Epcot's old omnibuses. Though the latter only lasted a brief 4 years, as allegedly they tore the roof off of the bus while passing under a bridge backstage. Honestly, this seems like something the Muppets would do. Speaking of...
They're here!
In 1990, the Muppets came to Walt Disney World in a television special designed to promote the Jim Henson Studios joining the Walt Disney Company. The hour-long show saw the Muppets experience all that Disney World had to offer, from Miss Piggy and Beauregard riding Big Thunder Mountain, to Kermit fighting Nazis in the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. It even ended with the Muppets paying a visit to their future corporate overlord.
Mickey, we've had a wonderful time at Walt Disney World. It's like a dream come true.
Well, you know what we say. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true.
Well, actually, what we say is, someday you'll find it, the Rainbow Connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me.
Uh-oh, they're starting to argue philosophy.
As with most Muppet projects, this special was a musical, and included the number Rockin' All Around the World performed by Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
Rock and rollin' around the world. Rock and rollin' the world around. Rock and rollin' around the world.
The song also marked the first appearance of Clifford outside of his debut in the Jim Henson Hour, as well as some of the Small World-esque dolls that could be found in Muppet Vision 3D. And while Muppet Vision was the last film Jim Henson directed, this special was his final performance, airing just 10 days before his death on May 16th.
Sing with me.
Why not? Have you been half asleep? And have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailor? The voice might be one and the same.
Despite the initial Muppet merger falling through, this would not be the last time the Muppets could be seen in Epcot, as Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker showcased their Muppet mobile labs through the mid-2000s.
And now for something completely different.
Welcome to jolly old England, the home of Shakespeare, Churchill, the Beatles, David Beckham's right foot.
David Beckham's left foot, come to that.
Great Britain's history is depicted through 8 different architectural styles, ranging from the thatched roofs of Stratford-upon-Avon to the elegant Georgian architecture of Kensington. Imagineers originally included the Old Bailey as well, but it kept blowing up during the 1812 Overture segment in Illuminations. Despite claiming to be a celebration of the entire United Kingdom, much like its architecture, the pavilion's area music is also primarily English. Historical tunes such as the British Grenadiers and Greensleeves, possibly the only song in a Disney theme park about decapitation, are intermixed with medleys from Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore and Sandy Wilson's 1954 musical The Boyfriend, which, interestingly enough, served as Julie Andrews' American stage debut. My personal favorite is Acker Bilk's wistful 1961 ballad, Stranger on the Shore. The UK's live performances tend to skew a bit more modern, starting with the long-running Beatles tribute band British Invasion. After 15 years, the band was replaced in 2011 by the spiritually similar British Revolution, who expanded beyond the Beatles to Queen, Pink Floyd, and the Rolling Stones, though they only lasted half as long, making their Brexit in 2020.
Not funny!
In 2022, the Hooligans brought an eclectic catalog of songs that would give Nevermind the Buzzcocks contestants a run for their money, playing everything from The Who to the Psychedelic Furs. Across the way, the Rose and Crown pub served as the longtime home of the piano lady herself, Carol Stein. First starting as the resident pianist for the Comedy Warehouse in Pleasure Island, Stein would go on to perform at the Grand Floridian and each of Disney World's 4 theme parks. But Epcot truly became Stein's home. Besides the Rose and Crown pub, Stein could also be found playing in the American Adventure Rotunda, the American Gardens Theater, and the United Kingdom's own bandstand. In November of 2022, after 32 years with the Walt Disney Company, Stein officially retired. Her final performances took place where her Epcot journey first began, and were widely attended, with both longtime fans and fellow cast members stopping by to honor the musical legend. And while the music of the UK Pavilion will play on, it certainly won't sound the same without Miss Stein. Grab your ketchup chips and Timbits because we've arrived at the final stop on our journey, Canada. Without a doubt, Off Kilter was this pavilion's leading musical export, performing at the park from the group's inception in 1997 to 2014. Co-founded by Jamie Holton and Mark Weldon, this Celtic-inspired rock band garnered a huge fan following, releasing 6 albums from 2008 to 2016. While some may question the group's inclusion in Canada, the band was known to cover a variety of Canadian musicians like Bryan Adams and Randy Bachman, and their fiddle player Jason Thomas was a native of Ontario. In their absence, the Mill Stage has played host to a myriad of Canadian music acts, ranging from the Quebec-based Suwa, as well as the Blueberry Grass Band, to current mainstay Alberta Bound. Most of these groups only perform during Epcot's various festivals, with the Festival of Holidays receiving its own group, the Canadian Holiday Voyagers. While quite relaxing, the pavilion's background music is not nearly as diverse as its live music, featuring Gordon Lightfoot, and look, more Gordon Lightfoot. Arranged by Ito Guadagni, who also composed the score for Spaceship Earth's 1994 update, this loop contains such Lightfoot classics as Early Morning Rain, Carefree Highway, and The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The original 1982 BGM loop could still be heard in the upper level until 2001, when all the stores that were located there were permanently closed. It at least featured a slightly wider selection, including the French-Canadian folk song Ville Bon Vent and Anne Murray's Snowbird. Like China, Canada's opening day attraction was also a Circle Vision 360 film. Simply titled Oh Canada, the film became known for its theme song, Canada, You're a Lifetime Journey, written by Bob Moline. Known for also writing Golden Dreams for the American Adventure, as well as Energy, You Make the World Go Round, and Listen to the Land for the Universe of Energy and Land Pavilions respectively, Moline also provided the English lyrics for Canada. The French lyrics were written by French pop singer Guy Bonaudot. The original version of the song was performed by John Zov and Wani Charmaine. Unfortunately, Moline's song was just about the only thing actual Canadians liked about the film. Longtime Toronto Star reporter Jack Lakey took personal issue with the attraction, stating in a 2005 article that it should be called Whoa Canada. The movie captures and magnifies almost every hokey cliché about the Great White North, from dog sleds, herds of caribou, and men in lumberjack shirts, to a narrator who keeps saying "eh." Lakey urged the Canadian Tourism Commission to partner with the Mouse to improve the film. Together with Tourism Toronto and the Calgary Stampede, they raised $1.5 million to help fund an updated film. And while the film did reuse some of the original footage and retain the same name as its predecessor, it did feature a new script, narrator, and score.
You know, I think that these good people deserve to hear from someone who knows the true Canada, someone who loves Canada, who grew up there.
Is Celine Dion here?
No, Celine Dion is not here. I'm referring to myself, Martin Short. Hello. Raised in Hamilton, Ontario.
Fine. I'll just go to the France Pavilion film, where they appreciate an invisible narrator.
Adieu.
Since Moline had already retired by this point, Bruce Broughton was brought on to score the new Martin Short-led film. This iteration did feature a new arrangement of Moline's title song, now performed by 2006 Canadian Idol winner Ava Avila. Upon viewing the updated film, Lakey remarked that it was everything the previous film was not. Urbane, amusing, reflective of our culture and sophistication, and breathtaking too, like Canada itself. Avila's performance remained as the show evolved once more into Canada Far and Wide in 2020, where Disney hired Canada's own Andrew Lockington to rescore the attraction yet again. Lockington does a great job capturing the modern spirit of his country while still paying tribute to the artists who came before him, a testament that applies to the World Showcase itself. Well, we've now come full circle. Sadly, that means this is where we must part. I hope you will continue to explore all the musical offerings these pavilions have to offer, and take inspiration from the talented individuals who bring their melodies to life. While these pavilions can never truly replace the incredible countries, cultures, and people they represent, they do help fulfill Epcot's original promise of global unity and friendship. For the World Showcase remains a diverse cultural mosaic, a place where our individual identities and voices can join together in global harmony. Thanks for watching, everyone. What is your favorite pavilion in the World Showcase? And more specifically, do you have a favorite musical act, attraction score, or area loop? As always, if you'd like to see more content, you can join our Patreon, which has monthly exclusive videos, audio recordings, and more, all just starting at $1 a month. Link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to give it a like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all a little later.